Good evening, everyone. Good evening. John Lawrence here, and it's party talk. We've got our... Oh.
You all right, John? Have you got mute there?
No. I had DLive on and just started playing on it. The rookie thing to do, but you know. And that's my phone, obviously. But yeah, welcome to this evening's party talk. We're going to be mentioning a bit about SNP finances. We're going to be talking about Bud Light and how drastic it was that they've lost millions, if not billions of pounds, and people are pulled away from them just for doing what they've done with Dylan Mulhoney, whoever he is, dressing up around like a woman. But like right now, local elections going good. I've more than half done me leafleting, but it was postal vote application day today, so I've been going round past couple of days getting some infirm people's postal vote applications and stuff like that, and I handed them in at the council today. But yeah, and I've already had people messaging me saying they like the leaflet, that there's a vote there for me. Several messages already, and my leaflet's impacting, and it says all the right things on it. But yeah, it's going good.
What's the mood like on the doorstep, John? What's the mood amongst the electorate? Who are they leaning towards?
Well, they're leaning towards now voting independent or different party. Although Labour do get in my area with a stock of votes, but that's been going down. And just in the last election, it was almost the same, 50-50, in the Conservatives and Labour to who got the seat. You know what I mean? It was that close, and maybe it will again. But I think that's because people are not voting them. That's why the vote count is going down. People aren't voting them because they're really disappointed. So it's a good time for independents and independent parties in Oldham right now, Paul. It is. It really is.
Does Labour have a big postal vote operation in Oldham? In Liverpool, every ward, they have 1,000 postal votes in reserve to win the ward, you know?
They do. In particular wards, they do. But no one else is going to win in them wards, I'll tell you now. But they do. And that's always been an issue with Oldham, is a postal voting, and the fact that people are not filling their own postal votes in. Someone's doing it for them or telling them what to do. That's the issue in Oldham. But some areas, but in Oldham generally, the feeling between all communities, not just one section, is distrust of the council. In one particular ward, there's 17 candidates running, and the top candidate is an independent, and he's really broken. He got in last year, and it's a stronghold over 30-year Labour ward, and he won it with his independent.
That's incredible. But the problem with the government is they brought in this voter ID that you have to use now when you go to vote at the at the polling station, but they've done nothing with the postal vote. Most of the fraud is attached to the postal vote. As you say, what's happening is the head of the family will fill it in for the whole family, maybe have 4, 5, 6 votes from one household, and then someone significant community figure like an imam will tell all his whole congregation how to vote, and they all vote in unison. So this is undermining the democratic process. And the Labour Party ring people up if they haven't sent their postal vote in and say, look, do you want us to come round and collect it, or do you know, make sure you post it, or if you don't post it by next Tuesday, we'll come round and take it off you. This isn't how the electoral process is supposed to work. This is manipulating the electoral process, and what they say in America, what the Democrats said, fortifying their vote. Elections are not supposed to be about fortifying your vote. They're supposed to be about individuals making their own decision in the polling booth. In France, they have no postal votes because they just say it's open to blatant fraud. I mean, the reason we had the whole COVID fiasco, the reason the likes of Fauci created this COVID nightmare was to force the Americans to get involved with postal voting. And then they knew they could farm the postal votes and they could manipulate it on a massive scale, which they did. And that's what won the Democrats the election. So there's still a lot of fraud built into the system. It's going to be interesting to see what the voter ID impact is, because a lot of people now are thinking, oh, well, I haven't got voter ID, so I'm not going to bother to vote. Or they're going to go along to the polling station without voter ID and be told they've got to come back with it, and they probably won't bother. Because, to be honest, most people are not that enthusiastic about the democratic process because they can't see change. It's when they're making an impact, like, for example, the referendum on the EU in 2016, we voted out. People realised their vote would count, and there was an over 80% turnout. That's our job as candidates, to enthuse people and say to people, look, your vote does count, and it will make a significant difference.
Well, as you say about postal voting, I've been in the council a few times over the past few weeks, and one day I went in, the photocopier they have in the lobby, I was sat near it, I looked on top of it, and it was postal vote application forms being copied within the council on the council thingy. And I'll say, I'll hold my hands up, there was a good few copies, and I took some because I'm using them as well, so I took a few off it. You know what I mean? So everyone's wised up to it to get it on. But I mean, at the moment, while they have got postal voting on, then I get people on it. But it's up to us, Paul, to call them out. I mean, I don't know how many people know the full democratic process. Does everyone know what happens with the postal vote? Does everyone know who handles all the votes? Now, if we don't know that, then how can we call people out for postal vote fraud? But it's up to us to call it out. So in my last candidate meeting, in front of the Labour candidate, the Lib Dem candidate, the Independent, the chief executive of the council, I said, I'm concerned because Oldham's got an history of postal voting fraud. That's what I said to him in the meeting, you know. So I don't have to prove to anyone that I'm not doing the right thing. I asked about putting seals on the boxes, the postal vote box. It's up to us. We can blindly follow and let people do these things, but it's up to us to get involved in it. And if I see something that's wrong or not involved, I will report it to the necessary people, you know, and get it sorted.
Well, when I stood as a candidate in Liverpool, both as a mayoral candidate twice, police commissioner, stood for local elections, stood in the European elections, we would go to a briefing by the local police on fraud, voting fraud. Now, they gave us a little mini lecture about different types of voting fraud and what their procedure is to counteract it and so on. And I just asked a simple question. How many people have been prosecuted for voting fraud in the past 10 years in Liverpool? And I think it was one person. He was the former leader of the Liberal Democrats, and that was a politically motivated prosecution. So although the police know that postal voting fraud is rampant, there are no prosecutions. They don't actually investigate anyone. It's a bit like that when Trump in 2020, and they took it to court, they tried to get people to investigate the voter fraud, and the judge just said, oh, no, you haven't got sufficient standing to prosecute this case. And the attorney generals just said, oh, no, we're not going to investigate. It's not worth the effort. Nobody was actually investigated. I mean, they just fob you off. I mean, people think the authorities are going to impose the law. They don't.
They can fob us off only for so long. But public pressure, and exactly like the referendum, public pressure will force things to change. If I do see something out of the ordinary, I'm going to report it. And obviously, you know, they can try and silence me or whatever, but I will carry on reporting it. And I'm not going to be not doing any more local elections for however I'm alive now. I want to be running in local elections or higher. That's what I want to do for the rest of my life. I'm not interested in other things. This is what I'm going to focus on. But it's up to us to call them out, and we don't do enough. We've left the establishment to run our country without getting involved in it. So I'm not saying it's just all the establishment. Some of it's our fault, Paul. It is through being ignorant peasants, when we shouldn't be. You know what I mean? Some people have been more awake than others, like say you or me, compared to other people, and I'm not blaming them or anything like that, but, it's ignorance. So we have to wisen up and learn all the situation. So if you're getting into local council, you can ask about postal voting fraud. You can ask your elections officer, do they have a thing with the police? I didn't know they did a talk with you. Now, I didn't know they did that. So I'm going to ask in my email, is there a talk that you do with the police about postal voting fraud? I want to know, Paul. Now you've told me that. I want to know now. There might be.
The reason he spoke to us, this was when we were standing for the police commissioner. So they wanted to make sure it was a squeaky clean election, which it wasn't, because Labour just mobilised its postal vote again. But the thing was a democracy. To make democracy work, to make it fair, you've got to have proactive citizens. And you've also got to have a decent media that actually listens to the citizens. The problem is the media now has been bought off as well, so it's difficult to get it out. Of course, we've got social media. But what we've seen in Scotland, and this is what I wanted to talk about, is the SNP effectively rule the roost in Scotland the past 20 years. They've taken over Scottish politics. They had a 20% lead in the opinion polls. The opposition vote was divided between Labour, the Tories, Lib Dems, so on. So they felt impregnable in Scotland. And people knew that there was more and more fraud taking place in the Scottish government. The police were reluctant to investigate it because they didn't want to come up against the behemoth, the might of the SNP in Scotland. The police were intimidated. Now, I think it was about 4 weeks ago now. This is how recent it all is. It's all happened very quickly up in Scotland, John. Nicola Sturgeon made a big stand for transgender prisoners. Transgender women are women, she said, and they can go into women's prisons. And we had a couple of examples of male rapists who've been sentenced to 10 years plus in prison, just come out of the closet and said, I'm really a woman. I'm putting on a frock and a wig, and I demand to be sent to a woman's prison. So they were sent to women's prison. These were male rapists who were pretending to be women. And Nicola Sturgeon, one of a wonderful statements she made, she said, anyone who criticises these people is a racist. And I thought, why she brought that word into play? Not just transphobic. That somehow you're beyond the pale. They've got all their slur terms, you're transphobic, homophobic, his own. But she pulled out the big one, you're a racist if you criticise transgender women. And it all become a bit of a nonsense. And of course, one of these male rapists went into prison and started to invade other women's spaces and assault other women. So it became a total farce. And people thought, where's the reality here? This is bizarre. And so Nicola Sturgeon come across as a ludicrous figure. And there was an avalanche of mockery and criticism of her on social media. And she caved, John, because she was impregnable a month ago. She ruled the roost, but suddenly she looked fragile. She had feet of clay, and bang, she collapsed overnight. And it was a lovely sight to behold. Now, once she collapsed, the police suddenly found a bit of courage and started to investigate these claims of fraud within the SNP itself and within the government, which were actually huge amounts of money, billions, were being misappropriated or not spent properly. And they were rewarding for doing favourites for friends and so on. We've had all this in Liverpool, John, as you're well aware. You can't trust these people unless you hold them to account. You let them make decisions behind closed doors. and they all look after each other. How do these people get rich? They're only petty politicians, and yet they manage to become multimillionaires, you know. And of course, Nicola Sturgeon, she had a lovely villa in Portugal. She had a massive 100,000 plus mobile home. And all this is very suspicious where she got the money from. And so the police raided her house, didn't they? And do you remember when they were camped out, a bit like Fred West, they were digging up a garden? And I think Peter Murrell, her husband, he got arrested. And now today they've arrested Colin Beattie, who was the financier of the SNP. And the truth is, if he sings, he was organising all this fraud. If he sings, there's a lot of people in the SNP who are going to go down. I mean, there's a whole house of cards in Scotland which is about to fall. And the SNP, the ultimate wokies, you know, left-wing lunatics, it couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people, John.
I mean, yeah, there's lots to do with the fraud. Luxury motorhome is mentioned and stuff like that. And you know, I've said it for years. And although I want to be part of the system, the politicians that we have now, they're not here for normal, regular working class people. They're not. We don't have any representation of that in government. We don't. There's nobody in government who I can say that I can look to who I think isn't, you know, somehow bent or something like that. And we've left it for so long. That's why we have to get involved. That's why working class people have to get involved. That's why we should have working class members of parliament, working class, every position we should have working class people in to know, not rich people who've just come into politics in 2015 and become prime minister in a couple of years because he's rich. No, that just does not show me anything to do with being British. It doesn't, it doesn't show any kind of loyalty. So we shouldn't have it. But again, it's up to us to get involved. See how I do. I might end up being shit as a councillor, but at least I would have done it. At least I would have tried to say the right things to call people out. And yeah, accountability. I always want accountability. And you know, I've been in trouble in my time, but I've been held accountable for it. But now we have people who get in serious trouble who are not held to account, who go on within political parties, getting pay rises, getting shifted to other positions after they've let 1,500 girls get raped in Rotherham on accountability. And it's wrong. We shouldn't have that. But again, it's our fault for being ignorant and not calling them to account in the first place, Paul. So we should be stepping up more to do that.
The truth is, John, they had the whole system sewn up. They knew the spiel. They had the media on board. They had all the organs of the state on board, such as the police, such as the council officials. They were all in it together, and they were all, you know, as I say, stroking each other's backs. And they had it all sewn up. And then suddenly they've introduced this woke ideology. And there's a slogan in there: go woke, go broke. Because it's such madness that people start to suddenly say, hang on, these people are not sensible people. They're not sane people. They're a gang of phonies and lunatics. And they're running a system not in our interest. I mean, what sort of motivates them to say that dirty old men in frocks can go into girls' toilets because they claim to be women? People say, are you serious? I mean, you know, I've got daughters myself and granddaughters. The idea that they go to the toilet to spend a penny and suddenly there's a dirty old man in there in a frock waiting for them, claiming to be a woman. It's just absurd. It's perverse. And yet these politicians are saying, oh, no, we've got to respect these people. A trans woman is a woman. And whoever coined that expression was having a laugh because it's made them look like a bunch of total fools. And we've seen this with Bud Light as well. Said, oh, we got to change the culture, you know. We don't want it all men having a good laugh and drinking Bud and pretending to be cowboys. We got to be respectful of trans people, trans women are women. And so they brought this guy, what's his name? Mulvaney, what's his name? Dylan Mulvaney or something?
Dylan Mulvaney.
Yeah, so he becomes the face of Bud Light. And all the guys who drink Bud Light said, are you having a laugh? You know, you want us to identify with a drink which is promoting these cranks? Because they're all mentally ill people. I mean, people are mentally ill, people are delusional. You know, can have some sympathy with that. But these people are very aggressive. I mean, did you see the Canadian guy when he was standing there saying, look, you know, children don't have the right to say that they want their sex to be changed. You know, a kid of like 13 going through puberty who's confused by the whole thing to start with. Suddenly says, oh, I want my bits cutting off. And the state says, oh, well, you got to respect these children. Let's cut their bits off. He turned up and said, no, children don't have the right to do that because they're not mature enough. They haven't got enough perspective on life. Wait till they're 18 till they make a decision like that. Of course, a lot of the kids who say that they want to transition when they're 13, they actually put them on puberty blockers, start to warp their minds. And then they start cutting off bits of their body, mutilating them. And of course, when these kids reach 16 and 17, they realize they were just going through a phase and they want it reversed. And for some of them, it's not possible. It's really tragic what's happening. And the fact that the state is taking these kids seriously and pushing them, sometimes against the wishes of their parents, it's beyond sinister. It's just like a total lack of common sense and reality to it. So those of us who kept hold of common sense and reality say, hang on, this is sick. This is depraved. This is very sinister. These dirty old men preying on young kids. You've got to be kidding. We're not going to tolerate that. And so with that Canadian guy, he just went to a rally to say this, and they attacked him. I mean, that's been seen by millions. Did you see that the guy with the blonde-haired wig on started getting in his face saying, F you, F you, and then physically attacked him? And whose side were the police on? Our politically correct police.
I know it's not,
the lunatics.
Well, I mean, saying that though, I mean, I'm not saying things are changing, but Greater Manchester Police now are saying they're not going to be putting LGBT stuff on the side of the cars and stuff like that. They are a dangerous people, and they get away with it because the establishment is politically correct in believing their ideology when it goes against everybody else's wishes. It's a tiny, tiny minority. I can't give you a smaller minority in England right now than transgender people. I can't give you I can't say that the minority people in the UK are Tibetans. I can't say that because there's probably more Tibetans than there is trans people. So, you know, it's a tiny minority, and they're ruling the roost by holding this establishment to politically correct ideology to where they have to defend them at every right. But it's going to go back on them. We've already seen it start in Scotland.
And you've probably heard of this word, intersectionality. They have this flag, don't they? You've seen the flag now. It's the rainbow flag and the trans flag combined. And it's like, we're part of a minorities army. So they want to bring everyone together, homosexuals, transsexuals, the Muslims. There are the Muslims fit into that block, but I'm sure they're not too happy to be in there. And then they bring the PLN mob in, and they bring in. It's
going like that now. It's going like what it's going like now is that lesbians and gay people are pulling away from the trans movement because the trans movement are vilifying them. So if a trans woman, so that's a man who's a woman, says that they're a lesbian, and as a lesbian, you won't go with that person, then you're a transphobe. That's what they're doing now. So they're alienating everyone else. They've started off in Scotland. And it's coming here now. So, and we've already seen it's happened in America. Bud Light, £6 to £8 billion worth of revenue lost. Men showing videos of them with automatic firearms blasting all the Bud Light. I've seen guys pouring it all down the sink, and it's wrong. they've gone about it in what they thought was the right way, but it's the wrong way because people are waking up and they're not having it. They're not standing for it. And now that I hear that Budweiser have cancelled that now, and they're putting out the masculine advertisements again. And apparently it wasn't to do with anyone at the top of Budweiser. No one knew it were happening, and it just happened. It's unbelievable, honestly. But go woke, go broke. That's what you're going to do. So if you're going to stay woke and support that cause, it's going to come down on you in the end, and it's going to bite you in the ass really badly.
I actually, John, don't believe Budweiser, because apparently their CEO has got down on his CV that is also involved with the CIA. These people know exactly what they're doing. This agenda is pushed for a reason. You see, the problem with intersectionality, as you just pointed out, is it involves contradictory groups, and they come up against each other. But what these groups are all supposed to do is focus out in hostility towards straight, white, Christian males. They're the hate figure. These people have all got to be united against the straight, white, Christian males who are somehow oppressing everybody else just for being themselves. Now, the problem when they speak. Sorry?
Let men speak. That's what that should be the new hashtag. Let men speak, because you're right. We're being the straight white heterosexual male is the most vilified person in the world. In the world, is the most vilified person in the world. And
you've got to realise how successful this woke agenda has been, John, because everyone takes these terms seriously, like transphobia, homophobia, racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia. We've got to take these terms seriously, and we've got to sort of look. And now they've sort of created a sort of stench around white men. White men are somehow toxic in some way. Masculinity itself is toxic. The family is now oppressive. You know, I mean, it all goes back to this cultural Marxism. There was a guy called Thomas Adorno who wrote a book called The Authoritarian Male, which basically said father figures are oppressive figures. Rather than seeing father figures as creating a family, and the family is a good thing, they pointed the finger at the family, said it warps people. And the way to create happy, liberal, easygoing people is to get the father out of the family. That's what it was all about. And this is because these Marxists realize the strength of a nation is dependent on its families. The family is the building block for a nation, and they wanted to undermine the nation, undermine traditions in Western societies. And these cultural Marxists wanted to take over and rule the roost themselves. Now, the way they've done it is by taking control of the mass media. They can control the way people see the world, the way people think through the mass media, and they own the mass media, and also through education. This is what is really sinister. They get young children. And young children are very impressionable, and they've got no critical faculty to challenge what they're saying. I mean, I was a bit of a precocious kid, and I would challenge them. I remember when I was at school and we were pushing all these agendas, and I was like 11, 12, 13, and I used to push back then. And the teachers never liked me. But now the teachers are much more assertive about these agendas now. If you challenge them, if you challenge the homosexual agenda or the multicultural agenda, they will really stigmatize you now. You'll be labeled, and you'll be driven out, and you'll be disciplined. You're not allowed. There's no free thought with these people. These people have a ruling ideology, and if you're a heretic, you don't agree with them, they will punish you. And this is what our kids are going through in state schools, John. And what they do in state schools now, they basically say this: it's bad to be white. White people are oppressive. Like this Coca-Cola they've got saying, be less white. You know, did you see it on the side of the can? Yeah, it's wrong to somehow the way God made you is wrong. You've got a bad history. You're the slave owners. You're this, you're that. So you should be embarrassed to be white. And the way to overcome it is to be gay. If you're gay, you've that'll be celebrated, and you'll be in with the in crowd, and that's a positive thing. And kids react to these sort of programs. Kids are easily programmed, and they're warping kids' minds. I mean, Rishi Sunak has just said that we're not producing enough mathematicians in schools. What we're producing now is warped kids, sexually warped, socially warped kids. The state education sector now, John, I'd be very wary of sending my kids to a state school. And I'm not saying they're doing this 24/7, but they're doing it enough to really warp a lot of kids. And parents should be very aware of what's being taught in schools. And local councils as well.
They should be, but I mean, I can't say this. Well, I can say it categorically. Ofsted have said to Oldham schools that they must do more with gender identity. Now, why do I say that? It's because Oldham schools aren't teaching it. There's loads of Muslims in it. They're not even going to mention it in our schools at the moment, and especially the ones that are predominantly 100% Muslim. Gender identity does not get mentioned in them schools. Now, I don't think the rest of the world or the media can see it, but that's what's happening in Oldham now. It's also happening in Birmingham, but it's been really silent on the mainstream media. The only time they mention gender identity and things in school when it's white people doing it, but they won't mention it when it's anybody else. That's what's happening right now in Oldham. So, I mean, I feel a bit of a breath that I know that some of the kids that are going to school in Oldham are not going to be as indoctrinated as other children from other towns where they're going, because there's Muslims in the school and they will not teach them. So that's something going on in Oldham, but that we can come further to that. But there is a pushback against it. And like you said, the worst person vilified is the white heterosexual male. But I'm going to do a series of videos on this anti-white agenda. And when you look at any of the newspaper reports to do with LGBT and drag queen story time, all it says is far right. That's all it says. It doesn't say anything about protests in Birmingham over gender identity. Doesn't say anything about in Oldham, a prominent person come out and said there could be riots again if you don't take it out of school. Nothing like that's mentioned. But all the reports say far right, which is linked mainly to white people. So there is an agenda, and that agenda is against the white man, unfortunately.
The thing is with intersectionality, John, it turns out that it's a hierarchy, and at the top of that hierarchy is, strangely, the Muslims. You cannot offend the Muslims. I think there's two reasons for that. One is that the Muslims will push back and push back hard, and they're organized. The left want the Muslim bloc vote. They will not do anything to upset the Muslims, the left. So the Muslims have got the right to turn around and say, look, we don't want this woke agenda pushed down our kids' throats. We want to have traditional teaching about gender relationships and families in our schools. And of course, that's a strength to them. That means they're going to have more children. Their families are going to be stronger, and that gives them more power in society. So, this is all politics, John. It's all driven by political power. Now, the Labour Party have gone very quiet on the woke agenda. They've seen how ferocious the pushback is, because people don't like their kids being abused in this way. And so Keir Starmer initially was saying trans women are women, and saying that, some women had penises and things like that, really ridiculous things. But because it became such a joke, people were mocking him, and he realised this is taking credibility away from him. He pulled back from that, and the Labour Party has been told to go silent on intersectionality. But it's so deep in the education system now. This is the problem. It's so deep, and as you say, the only state schools where it's not being pushed are where there's a Muslim majority, because the Muslims will not tolerate it. And if we stand back, if we do what the Muslims do and go and protest and say, look, we don't want our kids warped by this nonsense, as you say, John, we're stigmatized as far right straight away. The media come out against us. Whereas they'll be sympathetic to Muslim parents because they're upholding their traditions and their religion. If you say you're a Christian, you're just vilified and mocked.
Spit on
This is
you.
how woke it's become. But there's only one way to overcome that: is to get people in political power who actually represent us again.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to go through the chat. Good evening, Arlene's on there. 6079 Smith Winston, Patriotic Twins. Good evening, sirs. Jez Davis, Oscar Miller, Timmy Bobbinson. I have seen Serena in. Mark Williams as well. Thank you for joining us, Mark. Babs McKay, hope you're all right, Babs. And who's this now? Bob. You've all been compromised. I'm from the dark web. I've hacked the chat. Yeah, right. One cell phones. You can have my phone number if you want to phone me up. But yeah, NHPUK TV party talk. We've just been talking about the SNP, Sturgeon, the SNP party under investigation for hundreds of thousands of pounds and payoffs and stuff like that. They're just scumbags, and these are the people who tell you that you're wrong, and they brand you with politically correct words, and they're ripping us off. As Paul did mention a little bit, we've already seen this in Liverpool. There's an estimated 100 million around the Joe Anderson time that's been filtered and wrongly allocated or whatever. And Oldham Council are guilty of it. There's several things. Well, you know, what are these councillors doing for anybody in the United Kingdom? They're not doing nothing. And anybody who's found to be ripping stuff off, really, should have the most serious arm of the law on them, considering they're in a position of trust and they're looking after us. This is what local councillors and MPs don't get. You know what I mean? It's like it's like if you're the boss of a factory and something goes wrong, but you are to blame, and you'll blame the little man at the end, but you won't take acceptability. Honestly, we're just not having it. And I'll take acceptability on accountability on whatever I do, but so should everyone else. And they're just screwing us over. They're just absolutely. I can't believe it. In Scotland, all that money, the SNP, the angels of politics. You know, SNP, we're so great and we're honest and we're woke and all that, and they're ripping everyone off.
Well, the thing is, John, what's happened is we've had layer upon layer of politicians in this country. So we have local councillors, we have these devolved governments in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland. We had Westminster, and then we had the European level. So we were thick with politicians, and they were all getting their fingers in the pie. They were all claiming something for themselves. Now, I think it's time to unravel that whole system. I think it's time now for Scotland, the whole devolution process, to come to an end. Because I think if we went back to what it was before 1996, where we only had 2 layers of government, I think that would be a lot better. What do you think, John?
I don't know, me. I can't get my head around all that at the moment, but I will think about it. I'm sure over the next time I will be thinking more of stuff like that. But I'm just excited, me, just because I'm running in my 3rd election in 12 months, and I'm just dead excited. I've had good reception from the door. I've already been round talking to people earlier on in the year who were on postal votes and asking them to vote for me and stuff like that. So we'll see on vote day. I've still got a little bit of work to do, and I have had some help, so I can't grumble. But, you know, somebody come out with me the other day, and the thing was, he said, you didn't even need your sheet, or you didn't even need to look where anything is. You know exactly where you were going. And I do. I spent 12 months in that area. I know every little street corner. I know every little shady ginnel that gets you to an house that you need to post a leaflet to. I know all this already after 12 months in the area. So, you know, so it's in my experience and it's in what I'm like. But it's just exciting. It just is exciting.
How are you received, John? Are you treated like a local hero in Oldham? I mean, you must be well known now. You're a big guy. You stand out with the cap on.
Definitely, Paul. Across a lot of different areas. But I mean, I don't. The thing is with me, I'm learning, and I'm not as judgmental as some of the others. One of the groups in Oldham as they had 5 councillors, and this election they're only running 4 because they had a bit of a breakup within the group. You know, so I'm disappointed there. But there is a lot more independents running. And yeah, I am well known. I'm not saying I'm the most well-known person in Oldham, but the area where I'm running, the people I've known there, if I'm 55, I've known them for 50 years. There's people down there who I went to school with, who I grew up with. There's children down there who I've took to, not mine, but I've took them to school in that area. You know what I mean? That's John. I'm well known like that. I'm well known on a family level because of my mum. My mum's quite well known across Oldham and Oldham town centre. And I seen a guy on buses today, and he was at the back of the bus, and when he come off, he tapped me on the shoulder. Oh, well done, John. Keep it up. Keep it up. Good luck. Good luck. You know what I mean? Because he knows I'm running for council, and he don't live nowhere near me. So, but yeah, it's good. It's exciting.
Well, this is our first year, really, of getting involved in local elections. I mean, the National Housing Party of the UK, it's only a year old. We're still growing. We're getting new members constantly. But next time round, we really need a cluster of candidates in cities. So we're not just individuals, but there'll be at least 3 or 4 in each council, so that we can campaign together and we can present a wider choice to the electorate. This is really what's important. We have to build an alternative political party. The Lib Lab can't. They just look after themselves. They've got their own agendas, and all they do is fob people off. They're not interested really in local people. And the housing, we call it a National Housing Party, but housing is such a crucial issue now, because it's absolutely scandalous that the British people who are desperate for housing, especially young couples, they're being put behind these bogus asylum seekers and these immigrants that are pouring in. They're getting priority for social housing, and they're getting access to private housing now. And it's like we're being treated as second-class citizens in our own country. And it's biting, John. It's biting, because people are not able to get decent homes anymore. And this is not on. You've got to have a decent home to start a family. So we've got to really emphasize that issue, providing housing for British people and British families, to young couples especially, and old people, and everybody. Everybody needs a decent home to live in. And this is one of the responsibilities that politicians had in the past. But now they've just fobbed it off. They don't seem to be interested. And because they've almost got a racket, it's almost a monopoly, the Lib Lab Con. It's a monopoly. So we have to, we have to get people to stand for the NHPUK. It's a great vehicle to get involved with, because we're new. Our ideas are being shaped. We're fresh. We're courageous people. I mean, I've known John for many years. He's known me. I mean, I stood in Liverpool against the Labour establishment and really took them on, full frontal attack on them. And, we're that sort of people. We got Pat down in London. We've got Gary on the Wirral. We've got Callum in the Southwest. We've got the Craigs. There's all sorts of people getting on board now, courageous people. You don't have to be courageous. You just have to be concerned about your community and want a fair say for the British people in their own country. So I'd invite people to get on board. There are more people getting on board. We've got a massive presence now on social media. I think Pat's got 26,000 followers now, hasn't he, on his Twitter account? You've got a very active Twitter account. Mine's been pretty rocking at the moment. So we're making our voices heard, and we're challenging the status quo. We're challenging the establishment. I mean, we've had this whole nonsense, the climate change agenda, COVID, what a con that was. And now we've got, you know, this stupid war in the Ukraine, which should be settled and compromised. And we've got this whole farce of these boats coming across the channel. Tens of thousands of people. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, because they're coming by planes and boats and trains. These people are milking this country. And we've got to the people, the ordinary people of this country, the working classes, some people call them. I just call them the ordinary British folk. I've got to be heard again, John. And we've got to be the tribunes of the people, the spokespeople, the spokesmen, and women, if we can get women involved, to speak up for the people and their needs. Because people have needs that are not being addressed. Housing is just one. Employment is another. Representation is another. We've talked about education tonight. We've talked about accountability and transparency. We've talked about anti-corruption measures. All these things are very important to create a decent community. We want secure borders. We want to end this refugee nonsense. We want to stop permanent settlement immigration. We've had enough. We've got to consolidate what we've got in this country. We've fed up with people taking advantage of us. We've got to put the British people first again, John.
Certainly, we certainly have to. We certainly have to put British people first for sure. I just want to quickly, you must have seen this. Jada Pinkett Smith has produced a film called Cleopatra, and they identify her as a black woman, and the Egyptians are going mad. And I mean, it's easy to Google up where Cleopatra come from. She was Greek or Macedonian, nothing to do with sub-Saharan black people. And this is the lengths are going to with this blackwashing. And you know, there's plenty of other famous black people that can do films on. So why blackwashing Cleopatra? It's just unbelievable. I mean, but I've talked about these things before. I've talked about false history. I've talked about what we get told, what is different to the true history in plenty of things, certainly even including the Windrush. I've done detailed videos on them, and I've done detailed videos on blackwashing, but that's what's going on right now. Cleopatra by Jada Pinkett Smith, produced by, she's a black woman, and Egyptians are going mad. And people in that area are going mad because it's just such a false image of what history portrays. But that's coming up. But yeah, it's all to go with the woke nonsense and
well, you've hit the nail on the head there, John, because this woke nonsense, it won't float in the Arab world. It won't float in China. It won't float in Russia. It won't float in India. They impose it on us. It seems to float here, and we've got to stand up to it because most ordinary people just want normality. They're fed up of all. It's warped. It's not just woke. It's warped, and they're fed up of this nonsense. We want to return to normality. Well, I want to give a shout out as well, John, before we finish, to a local group in Liverpool that's standing called Liberate Liverpool. And we talked about corruption up in Scotland. I mean, there's corruption within the SNP, but there's also corruption in the practices of the government, the Scottish government, which involves billions of pounds in the NHS, and they've got this ferry scheme of transportation. They've been funneling money off on a big scale, and that's happened in Liverpool. What they would do, they would sell properties, council properties, for peanuts to their friends on the assumption that their friends were going to get revenue for the council from rentiers and so on who would pay their council tax, and it would bring in extra revenue for the council. But of course, that never happened. What happened was their friends were buying properties cheap and then selling them off at huge profits, and there were paybacks to the councillors. That was one thing they were doing, but they were doing something else. They were selling land. Sorry, what's happened there? They had all sorts of schemes, like, for example, like potholes, filling potholes in the road, right? There was a lot of potholes in Liverpool, so the council, they put aside £12 million. They employed 4 firms to fill all the potholes. The work wasn't done. When they were pressured to come up with answers why the work wasn't done, they in turn asked the companies to get the finger out and do the work. What did the companies do, John?
What?
They went bankrupt. They never paid the council the money back. Just disappeared. Because they were all, there's all sorts of schemes going on to siphon money off the councils. I mean, it's probably rampant in places like Oldham.
Definitely. There's been a bit of a scandal already.
There's all these schemes. Now, the only thing you can counteract these schemes with is to have diligent councillors. What's actually happened in Liverpool is that the governments have had to step in and sack the council and run the city themselves. And I've got a feeling, this is why I said before about Scotland and the end of devolution, I've got a feeling the SNP government's going to collapse. I mean, this house of cards is falling dramatically. And every day now, there's new developments, new arrests, new exposures. I mean, they've lifted the lid here, and you know, there's a stench. There is corruption right to the heart of the SNP government, and I think you're going to find if you open the can in Wales, the worms will come out. The Welsh Labour Party, they're like the SNP. They're another bunch of corrupt villains. And this is right across the political system. People are now using politics to enrich themselves, not to serve the public, not to provide services to the public, but to enrich themselves, to siphon money off into their own pocket. And we're talking, John, not only of millions here, but billions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, now, the thing is, the only way we can stop this is by holding them to account. The media are supposed to do that, but the media are not what they were. The media are bought off as well. It's only active citizens like yourself, John, like the National Housing Party, like Liberate Liverpool. Big shout out to them. They're standing locally. They're standing, I think it's about 12 council candidates. These people deserve the vote because these people will expose the corruption that's taking place. And if you don't expose the corruption, these services that you think you deserve will disappear.
It certainly will. You can't have more wiser words than that. You cannot. But there is change coming. More people are waking up. So let's just hope that we can vote different. And I'm confident that Labour are going to lose the majority in our council this year. I'm really confident in that. So are a lot of other people. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Good evening, Sensum. Thank you very much. This is the NHPUK Party Talk. We've just been talking about SNP corruption, Bud Light. I walked there and how it's backfired on them, and they've lost billions. Left-wing teaching, the way they're teaching our kids in school and stuff like that. And we've just been talking about it today. But don't forget, keep watching out for Scotland. Watch out for NHPUK on Twitter and Facebook. Please follow us on all our social media links. If you received an email, you would have got the DLive link, VK link, and the Facebook link. But keep getting involved. I'm not sure when I'm going to do another video. I'm still busy this week, and I'm busy on Thursday. But I have got a couple of interviews to do this week. One with a woman who was a whistleblower in Oldham, and she's just been ignored by everyone, including running and serving councillors. They've just ignored her. If we can get her story out a little bit and she can get someone to see her, then I can use that against the corrupt councillor who ignored her. And she's not in my ward, but she's a person who lives in Oldham. And I care about all my town, not just my particular ward, but I do care about my town. I've lived across my town throughout my life. My family live across this town. My friends live across this town. So don't mind if I think like that, because that's one of the reasons why we're doing so bad, because we're all ignorant and we're all just think of ourselves We're not thinking of the bigger picture. We're never going to sort issues out unless we sort them out as a big picture. You can think you might be able to sort the grooming gangs out in Oldham. You won't unless you sort it out nationally and we do something about it at a serious level. Otherwise, it'll never go away. But just remember that. But thank you for tuning in. Me and Big Paul here, and we've just been go broke, you go walk, or go walk and you will go broke.
Amen. Cheers, John. See you soon. Take care. Bye, folks.
Cheers, mate. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Again, I will be with you next Tuesday. On election day, they're doing the count the day after on the Friday, and it starts at 10 a.m. in the morning. So I won't have to stay up late at night. I'll probably be able to stay out down my end to Hollingwood till 10, right till the end, and then get home, and then we're at the count in the morning. But that's up and coming. I'll post some stuff up, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing a Thursday video or not. Again, pretty busy this week, and Wednesday and Thursday are pretty good days. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday looks like rain, and I've got got enough to finish. I've got till Thursday to finish getting all my leaflets out. That's my plan, and it's been put forward already. That, but thank you very much for tuning in, everyone. I hope everyone has a good time, and I'll catch up with you all soon. And thank you for Mr. Rimmer there. Thank you very much, and I'll catch up with you all.